The Hitchhiker.
I had a new car. It was an exciting toy, a big BMW 3.3 Li, which means 3.3 litre long wheelbase fuel injection. It had a top speed of 129 miles an hour and terrific acceleration. The body was pale blue. The seats inside were darker blue, and they were made of leather, genuine soft leather of the finest quality. The windows were electrically operated, and so was the sunroof. The radio aerial popped up when I switched on the radio and disappeared when I switched it off. The powerful engine growled and grunted impatiently at slow speeds, but at 60 miles an hour, the growling stopped and the motor began to purr with pleasure. I was driving up to London by myself. It was a lovely June day. They were haymaking in the fields, and there were buttercups along both sides of the road. I was whispering along at 70 miles an hour, leaning back comfortably in my seat, with no more than a couple of fingers resting lightly on the wheel to keep her steady. Ahead of me, I saw a man thumbing a lift. I touched the footbrake and brought the car to a stop beside him. I always stopped for hitchhikers. I knew just how it used to feel to be standing on the side of a country road watching the cars go by. I hated the drivers for pretending they didn't see me, especially the ones in big cars with 3 empty seats. The large, expensive cars seldom stopped. It was always the smaller ones that offered you a lift, or the old rusty ones, or the ones that were already crammed full of children, and the driver would say, "I think we can squeeze in one more." The hitchhiker poked his head through the open window and said,
"Going to London, Governor?"
"Yes," I said. "Jump in." He got in, and I drove on. He was a small, ratty-faced man with grey teeth. His eyes were dark and quick and clever, like a rat's eyes, and his ears were slightly pointed at the top. He had a cloth cap on his head, and he was wearing a greyish-coloured jacket with enormous pockets. The grey jacket, together with the quick eyes and the pointed ears, made him look more than anything like some sort of a huge human rat. "What part of London are you headed for?" I asked him.
"I'm going right through London and out the other side,"
he said.
"I'm going to Epsom for the races. It's Derby Day today."
"So it is," I said. "I wish I were going with you. I love betting on horses."
"I never bet on horses,"
he said.
"I don't even watch them run. That's a stupid, silly business."
"Then why do you go?" I asked. He didn't seem to like that question. His little ratty face went absolutely blank, and he sat there staring straight ahead at the road, saying nothing. "I expect you helped to work the betting machines or something like that," I said.
"That's even sillier,"
he answered.
"There's no fun working them lousy machines and selling tickets to mugs. Any fool could do that."
There was a long silence. I decided not to question him any more. I remembered how irritated I used to get in my hitchhiking days when drivers kept asking me questions. "Where are you going? Why are you going there? What's your job? Are you married? Do you have a girlfriend? What's her name? How old are you?" And so on and so forth. I used to hate it. "I'm sorry," I said. "It's none of my business what you do. The trouble is, I'm a writer, and most writers are terrible nosy parkers."
"You write books?"
he asked. "Yes."
"Writing books is okay,"
he said.
"It's what I call a skilled trade." I'm in a skilled trade too. The folks I despise is them that spend all their lives doing crummy old routine jobs with no skill in them at all. You see what I mean?
"Yes."
"The secret of life,"
he said,
"is to become very, very good at something that's very, very hard to do."
"Like you," I said.
"Exactly. You and me both."
"What makes you think that I'm any good at my job?" I asked. "There's an awful lot of bad writers around."
"You wouldn't be driving about in a car like this if you weren't no good at it,"
he answered.
"It must have cost a tidy packet, this little job."
"It wasn't cheap."
"What can she do flat out?"
he asked. 129 miles an hour, I told him.
"I'll bet she won't do it."
"I'll bet she will."
"All car makers is liars,"
he said.
"You can buy any car you like and it will never do what the makers say it will in the ads."
"This one will."
"Open her up then and prove it,"
he said.
"Go on, governor. Open her right up and let's see what she'll do."
There is a roundabout at Chalfont St. Peter, and immediately beyond it there's a long straight section of dual carriageway. We came out of the roundabout onto the carriageway, and I pressed my foot down on the accelerator. The big car leapt forward as though she'd been stung. In 10 seconds or so, we were doing 90.
"Lovely!"
he cried.
"Beautiful! Keep going!"
I had the accelerator jammed right down against the floor, and I held it there.
100!
He shouted.
105! 110! 115! Go on, don't slack off!
I was in the outside lane, and we flashed past several cars as though they were standing still. A green Mini, a big cream-coloured Citroen, a white Land Rover, a huge truck with a container on the back, an orange-coloured Volkswagen minibus.
120!
My passenger shouted, jumping up and down.
Go on, get her up to 129.
At that moment, I heard the scream of a police siren. It was so loud it seemed to be right inside the car. And then a policeman on a motorcycle loomed up alongside us on the inside lane and went past us and raised a hand for us to stop. "Oh, my sainted aunt," I said. "That's torn it." The policeman must have been doing about 130 when he passed us, and he took plenty of time slowing down. Finally, he pulled into the side of the road, and I pulled in behind him. "I didn't know police motorcycles could go as fast as that," I said rather lamely.
That one can.
My passenger said.
It's the same make as yours. It's a BMW R90S. Fastest bike on the road. That's what they're using nowadays.
The policeman got off his motorcycle and leaned the machine sideways onto its prop stand. Then he took off his gloves and placed them carefully on the seat. He was in no hurry now. He had us where he wanted us, and he knew it. "This is real trouble," I said. "I don't like it one bit."
Don't talk to him any more than is necessary, you understand.
My companion said.
Just sit tight and keep mum.
Like an executioner approaching his victim, the policeman came strolling slowly towards us. He was a big, meaty man with a belly, and his blue breeches were skin-tight around his enormous thighs. His goggles were pulled up onto the helmet, showing a smouldering red face with wide cheeks. We sat there like guilty schoolboys, waiting for him to arrive.
Watch out for this man,
my passenger whispered.
He looks mean as the devil.
The policeman came round to my open window and placed one meaty hand on the sill.
What's the hurry?
He said. "No hurry, officer," I answered.
Perhaps there's a woman in the back having a baby. You're rushing her to hospital. Is that it?
No, officer.
Or perhaps your house is on fire and you're dashing home to rescue the family from upstairs.
His voice was dangerously soft and mocking. "My house isn't on fire, officer."
In that case,
he said,
you've got yourself into a nasty mess, haven't you? Do you know what the speed limit is in this country?
70, I said.
And do you mind telling me exactly what speed you were doing just now?
I shrugged and didn't say anything. When he spoke next, he raised his voice so loud that I jumped.
120 miles per hour!
He barked.
That's 50 miles an hour over the limit!
He turned his head and spat out a big gob of spit. It landed on the wing of my car and started sliding down over my beautiful blue paint. Then he turned back again and stared hard at my passenger.
And who are you?
He asked sharply. He's a hitchhiker, I said. I'm giving him a lift.
I didn't ask you,
he said.
I asked him.
Have I done something wrong?
My passenger asked. His voice was as soft and oily as hair cream.
That's more than likely,
the policeman answered.
Anyway, you're a witness. I'll deal with you in a minute. Driving license,
he snapped, holding out his hand. I gave him my driving license. He unbuttoned the left-hand breast pocket of his tunic and brought out the dreaded books of tickets. Carefully, he copied the name and address from my license. Then he gave it back to me. He strolled round to the front of the car and read the number from the number plate and wrote that down as well. He filled in the date, the time, and the details of my offence. Then he tore out the top copy of the ticket. But before handing it to me, he checked that all the information had come through clearly on his own carbon copy. Finally, he replaced the book in his tunic pocket and fastened the button.
Now you,
he said to my passenger, and he walked around to the other side of the car. From the other breast pocket, he produced a small black notebook.
Name?
He snapped.
Michael Fish,
my passenger said.
Address?
14 Windsor Lane, Luton.
Show me something to prove this is your real name and address,
the policeman said. My passenger fished in his pockets and came out with a driving license of his own. The policeman checked the name and address and handed it back to him.
What's your job?
He asked sharply.
I'm an odd carrier.
A what?
An odd carrier.
Spell it.
H-O-D-C-A...
That'll do. And what's a hod carrier, may I ask?
An odd carrier, officer, is a person who carries the cement up the ladder to the bricklayer. And the odd is what he carries it in. It's got a long handle, and on the top you've got 2 bits of wood set at an angle.
All right, all right. Who's your employer?
Don't have one. I'm unemployed.
The policeman wrote all this down in the black notebook. Then he returned the book to its pocket and did up the button.
When I get back to the station, I'm going to do a little checking up on you,
he said to my passenger.
Me? What have I done wrong?
The rat-faced man asked.
I don't like your face, that's all.
The policeman said.
And we just might have a picture of it somewhere in our files.
He strolled round the car and returned to my window.
I suppose you know you're in serious trouble,
he said to me. Yes, officer.
You won't be driving this fancy car of yours again for a very long time, not after we've finished with you. You won't be driving any car again, come to that, for several years. And a good thing, too. I hope they lock you up for a spell into the bargain.
You mean prison? I asked, alarmed.
Absolutely,
he said, smacking his lips.
In the clink, behind the bars, along with all the other criminals who break the law. And a hefty fine into the bargain. Nobody will be more pleased about that than me. I'll see you in court, both of you. You'll be getting a summons to appear.
He turned away and walked over to his motorcycle. He flipped the prop stand back into position with his foot and swung his leg over the saddle. Then he kicked the starter and roared off up the road out of sight. Phew, I gasped. That's done it.
We was caught,
my passenger said.
We was caught good and proper.
I was caught, you mean?
That's right,
he said.
What are you going to do now, Governor?
I'm going straight up to London to talk to my solicitor, I said. I started the car and drove on.
You mustn't believe what he said to you about going to prison,
my passenger said.
They don't put nobody in the clink just for speeding.
Are you sure of that? I asked.
I'm positive,
he answered.
They can take your licence away and they can give you a whopping big fine. But that'll be the end of it.
I felt tremendously relieved. By the way, I said, why did you lie to him?
Who, me?
He said.
What makes you think I lied?
You told him you were an unemployed hod carrier, but you told me you were in a highly skilled trade.
So I am,
he said.
But it don't pay to tell everything to a copper.
So what do you do? I asked him.
Ah,
he said slyly.
That'd be telling, wouldn't it?
Is it something you're ashamed of?
Ashamed?
He cried.
Me ashamed of my job? I'm about as proud of it as anybody could be in the entire world.
Then why won't you tell me?
You writers really is nosy parkers, aren't you?
He said.
And you ain't going to be happy, I don't think, until you've found out exactly what the answer is.
I don't really care one way or the other, I told him, lying. He gave me a crafty little ratty look out of the sides of his eyes.
I think you do care,
he said.
I can see it on your face, that you think I'm in some kind of a very peculiar trade and you're just aching to know what it is.
I didn't like the way he read my thoughts. I kept quiet and stared at the road ahead.
You'd be right, too,
he went on.
I am in a very peculiar trade. I'm in the queerest peculiar trade of them all.
I waited for him to go on.
That's why I has to be extra careful who I'm talking to, you see. How am I to know, for instance, you're not another copper in plain clothes?
Do I look like a copper?
No,
he said.
You don't, and you ain't. Any fool could tell that.
He took from his pocket a tin of tobacco and a packet of cigarette papers and started to roll a cigarette. I was watching him out of the corner of one eye, and the speed with which he performed this rather difficult operation was incredible. The cigarette was rolled and ready in about 5 seconds. He ran his tongue along the edge of the paper, stuck it down, and popped the cigarette between his lips. Then, as if from nowhere, a lighter appeared in his hand. The lighter flamed. The cigarette was lit. The lighter disappeared. It was altogether a remarkable performance. I've never seen anyone roll a cigarette as fast as that, I said.
Ah,
he said, taking a deep suck of smoke.
So you noticed?
Of course I noticed. It was quite fantastic. He sat back and smiled. It pleased him very much that I had noticed how quickly he could roll a cigarette.
You want to know what makes me able to do it?
He asked. Go on, then.
It's because I've got fantastic fingers. These fingers of mine,
he said, holding up both hands high in front of him,
are quicker and cleverer than the fingers of the best piano player in the world.
Are you a piano player?
Don't be daft,
he said.
Do I look like a piano player?
I glanced at his fingers. They were so beautifully shaped, so slim and long and elegant, they didn't seem to belong to the rest of him at all. They looked more like the fingers of a brain surgeon or a watchmaker.
My job,
he went on,
is 100 times more difficult than playing the piano. Any twerp can learn to do that. It's titchy little kids learning to play the piano in almost any house you go into these days. That's right, isn't it?
More or less, I said.
Of course it's right. But there's not one person in 10 million can learn to do what I do. Not one in 10 million. How about that?
Amazing, I said.
You're darn right it's amazing,
he said. I think I know what you do, I said. You do conjuring tricks. You're a conjurer.
Me?
He snorted.
A conjurer? Can you picture me going round crummy kids' parties making rabbits come out of top hats?
Then you're a card player. You get people into card games and deal yourself marvellous hands.
Me, a rotten card sharper?
He cried.
That's a miserable racket if ever there was one.
All right, I give up. I was taking the car along slowly now, at no more than 40 miles an hour, to make quite sure I wasn't stopped again. We had come on to the main London-Oxford road and were running down the hill towards Denham. Suddenly, my passenger was holding up a black leather belt in his hand.
Ever seen this before?
He asked. The belt had a brass buckle of unusual design. Hey, I said, that's mine, isn't it? It is mine. Where did you get it? He grinned and waved the belt gently from side to side.
Where do you think I got it?
He said.
Off the top of your trousers, of course.
I reached down and felt for my belt. It was gone. You mean you took it off me while we've been driving along? I asked, flabbergasted. He nodded, watching me all the time with those little black ratty eyes. That's impossible, I said. You'd have had to undo the buckle and slide the whole thing out through the loops all the way round. I'd have seen you doing it. And even if I hadn't seen you, I'd have felt it.
Ah, but you didn't, did you?
He said, triumphant. He dropped the belt on his lap, and now all at once there was a brown shoelace dangling from his fingers.
And what about this then?
He exclaimed, waving the shoelace. What about it? I said.
Anyone around here missing a shoelace?
He asked, grinning. I glanced down at my shoes. The lace of one of them was missing. Good grief, I said. How did you do that? I never saw you bending down.
You never saw nothing,
he said proudly.
You never even saw me move an inch. And you know why?
Yes, I said. Because you've got fantastic fingers.
Exactly right,
he cried.
You catch on pretty quick, don't you?
He sat back and sucked away at his homemade cigarette, blowing the smoke out in a thin stream against the windshield. He knew he had impressed me greatly with those 2 tricks, and this made him very happy.
I don't want to be late,
he said.
What time is it?
There's a clock in front of you, I told him.
I don't trust car clocks,
he said.
What does your watch say?
I hitched up my sleeve to look at the watch on my wrist. It wasn't there. I looked at the man. He looked back at me, grinning. You've taken that too, I said. He held out his hand, and there was my watch lying in his palm.
Nice bit of stuff, this,
he said.
Superior quality. 18-carat gold. Easy to flog, too. It's never any trouble getting rid of quality goods.
I'd like it back if you don't mind, I said rather huffily. He placed the watch carefully on the leather tray in front of him.
I wouldn't nick anything from you, Governor,
he said.
You're my pal. You're giving me a lift.
I'm glad to hear it, I said.
All I'm doing is answering your questions,
he went on.
You asked me what I did for a living, and I'm showing you.
What else have you got of mine? He smiled again, and now he started to take from the pocket of his jacket one thing after another that belonged to me. My driving licence, a key ring with 4 keys on it, some pound notes, a few coins, a letter from my publishers, my diary, a stubby old pencil, a cigarette lighter, and last of all, a beautiful old sapphire ring with pearls around it belonging to my wife. I was taking the ring up to the jeweller in London because one of the pearls was missing.
Now there's another lovely piece of goods,
he said, turning the ring over in his fingers.
That's 18th century, if I'm not mistaken, from the reign of King George III.
You're right, I said, impressed. You're absolutely right. He put the ring on the leather tray with the other items. So you're a pickpocket, I said.
I don't like that word,
he answered.
It's a coarse and vulgar word. Pickpockets is coarse and vulgar people who only do easy little amateur jobs. They lift money from blind old ladies.
What do you call yourself, then?
Me? I'm a fingersmith. I'm a professional fingersmith.
He spoke the words solemnly and proudly, as though he were telling me he was the president of the Royal College of Surgeons or the Archbishop of Canterbury. I've never heard that word before, I said. Did you invent it?
Of course I didn't invent it,
he replied.
It's the name given to them who's risen to the very top of the profession. You've heard of a goldsmith and a silversmith, for instance. They're experts with gold and silver. I'm an expert with my fingers, so I'm a fingersmith.
It must be an interesting job,
It's a marvellous job.
he answered.
It's lovely.
And that's why you go to the races?
Race meetings is easy meat.
He said.
You just stand around after the race, watching for the lucky ones to queue up and draw their money. And when you see someone collecting a big bundle of notes, you simply follows after him and helps yourself. And don't get me wrong, Governor. I never takes nothing from a loser. Nor from poor people, neither. I only go after them as can afford it. The winners and the rich.
That's very thoughtful of you, I said. How often do you get caught?
Caught?
He cried, disgusted.
Me get caught? It's only pickpockets get caught. Fingersmiths never. Listen, I could take the false teeth out of your mouth if I wanted to, and you wouldn't even catch me.
I don't have false teeth, I said.
I know you don't,
He answered.
Otherwise I'd have had 'em out long ago.
I believed him. Those long, slim fingers of his seemed able to do anything. We drove on for a while without talking. That policeman's going to check up on you pretty thoroughly, I said. Doesn't that worry you a bit?
Nobody's checking up on me.
He said. Of course they are. He's got your name and address written down most carefully in his black book. The man gave me another of his sly, ratty little smiles.
Ah,
He said.
so he has. But I bet he ain't got it all written down in his memory as well. I've never known a copper yet with a decent memory. Some of 'em can't even remember their own names.
What's memory got to do with it? I asked. It's written down in his book, isn't it?
Yes, Governor, it is. But the trouble is, he's lost the book. He's lost both books. The one with my name in it and the one with yours.
In the long, delicate fingers of his right hand, the man was holding up in triumph the 2 books he had taken from the policeman's pockets.
Easiest job I ever done.
He announced proudly. I nearly swerved the car into a milk truck, I was so excited.
That copper's got nothing on either of us now.
He said. You're a genius, I cried.
He's got no names, no addresses, no car number, no nothing.
He said. You're brilliant,
I think you'd better pull in off this main road as soon as possible.
he said.
Then we'd better build a little bonfire and burn these books.
You're a fantastic fellow, I exclaimed.
Thank you, Governor.
He said.
It's always nice to be appreciated. The way up to heaven.
All her life, Mrs. Foster had had an almost pathological fear of missing a train, a plane, a boat, or even a theatre curtain. In other respects, she was not a particularly nervous woman, but the mere thought of being late on occasions like these would throw her into such a state of nerves that she would begin to twitch. It was nothing much, just a tiny vellicating muscle in the corner of the left eye, like a secret wink. But the annoying thing was that it refused to disappear until an hour or so after the train or plane or whatever it was had been safely caught. It was really extraordinary how in certain people a simple apprehension about a thing like catching a train can grow into a serious obsession. At least half an hour before it was time to leave the house for the station, Mrs. Foster would step out of the elevator all ready to go, with hat and coat and gloves. And then, being quite unable to sit down, she would flutter and fidget about from room to room, until her husband, who must have been well aware of her state, finally emerged from his privacy and suggested in a cool, dry voice that perhaps they had better get going now, had they not. Mr. Foster may possibly have had a right to be irritated by this foolishness of his wife's, but he could have had no excuse for increasing her misery by keeping her waiting unnecessarily. Mind you, it is by no means certain that this is what he did. Yet whenever they were to go somewhere, his timing was so accurate, just a minute or two late, you understand, and his manner so bland that it was hard to believe he wasn't purposely inflicting a nasty, private little torture of his own on the unhappy lady. And one thing he must have known, that she would never dare to call out and tell him to hurry. He had disciplined her too well for that. He must also have known that if he was prepared to wait even beyond the last moment of safety, he could drive her nearly into hysterics. On one or two special occasions in the later years of their married life, it seemed almost as though he had wanted to miss the train simply in order to intensify the poor woman's suffering. Assuming, though one cannot be sure, that the husband was guilty, what made his attitude doubly unreasonable was the fact that, with the exception of this one small irrepressible foible, Mrs. Foster was and always had been a good and loving wife. For over 30 years she had served him loyally and well. There was no doubt about this. Even she, a very modest woman, was aware of it. And although she had for years refused to let herself believe that Mr. Foster would ever consciously torment her, there had been times recently when she had caught herself beginning to wonder. Mr. Eugene Foster, who was nearly 70 years old, lived with his wife in a large 6-story house in New York City on East 62nd Street, and they had 4 servants. It was a gloomy place, and few people came to visit them. But on this particular morning in January, the house had come alive, and there was a great deal of bustling about. One maid was distributing bundles of dust sheets to every room, while another was draping them over the furniture. The butler was bringing down suitcases and putting them in the hall. The cook kept popping up from the kitchen to have a word with the butler, and Mrs. Foster herself, in an old-fashioned fur coat and with a black hat on the top of her head, was flying from room to room and pretending to supervise these operations. Actually, she was thinking of nothing at all, except that she was going to miss her plane if her husband didn't come out of his study soon and get ready.
What time is it, Walker?
She said to the butler as she passed him.
It's 10 minutes past 9, madam.
And has the car come?
Yes, madam, it's waiting. I'm just going to put the luggage in now.
It takes an hour to get to Idlewild,
She said.
My plane leaves at 11. I have to be there half an hour beforehand for the formalities. I shall be late. I just know I'm going to be late.
I think you have plenty of time, madam.
The butler said kindly.
I warned Mr. Foster that you must leave at 9:15. There's still another 5 minutes.
Yes, Walker, I know. But get the luggage in quickly, will you, please?
She began walking up and down the hall, and whenever the butler came by, she asked him the time. This, she kept telling herself, was the one plane she must not miss. It had taken months to persuade her husband to allow her to go. If she missed it, he might easily decide that she should cancel the whole thing. And the trouble was that he insisted on coming to the airport to see her off.
Dear God,
She said aloud.
I'm going to miss it. I know, I'm going to miss it.
The little muscle beside the left eye was twitching madly now. The eyes themselves were very close to tears.
What time is it, Walker?
It's 18 minutes past, madam.
Now, I really will miss it.
She cried.
Oh, I wish he would come.
This was an important journey for Mrs. Foster. She was going all alone to Paris to visit her daughter, her only child, who was married to a Frenchman. Mrs. Foster didn't care much for the Frenchman, but she was fond of her daughter. And more than that, she had developed a great yearning to set eyes on her 3 grandchildren. She knew them only from the many photographs that she had received, and that she kept putting up all over the house. They were beautiful, these children. She doted on them, and each time a new picture arrived, she would carry it away and sit with it for a long time, staring at it lovingly and searching the small faces for signs of that old, satisfying blood-likeness that meant so much. And now, lately, she had come more and more to feel that she did not really wish to live out her days in a place where she could not be near these children and have them visit her and take them for walks and buy them presents and watch them grow. She knew, of course, that it was wrong and in a way disloyal to have thoughts like these while her husband was still alive. She knew also that although he was no longer active in his many enterprises, he would never consent to leave New York and live in Paris. It was a miracle that he had ever agreed to let her fly over there alone for 6 weeks to visit them. But oh, how she wished she could live there always and be close to them.
Walker, what time is it?
22 minutes past, madam.
As he spoke, a door opened and Mr. Foster came into the hall. He stood for a moment, looking intently at his wife, and she looked back at him, at this diminutive but still quite dapper old man, with a huge bearded face that bore such an astonishing resemblance to those old photographs of Andrew Carnegie.
Well,
He said.
I suppose perhaps we'd better get going fairly soon if you want to catch that plane.
Yes, dear, yes. Everything's ready. The car's waiting.
That's good.
He said. With his head over to one side, he was watching her closely. He had a peculiar way of cocking the head and then moving it in a series of small, rapid jerks. Because of this, and because he was clasping his hands up high in front of him, near the chest, he was somehow like a squirrel standing there, a quick, clever old squirrel from the park.
Here's Walker with your coat, dear. Put it on.
I'll be with you in a moment,
He said.
I'm just going to wash my hands.
She waited for him, and the tall butler stood beside her, holding the coat and the hat.
Walker, will I miss it?
No, madam.
The butler said.
I think you'll make it all right.
Then Mr. Foster appeared again, and the butler helped him on with his coat. Mrs. Foster hurried outside and got into the hired Cadillac. Her husband came after her, but he walked down the steps of the house slowly, pausing halfway to observe the sky and to sniff the cold morning air.
It looks a bit foggy,
he said as he sat down beside her in the car.
and it's always worse out there at the airport. I shouldn't be surprised if the flight's cancelled already.
Don't say that, dear, please.
They didn't speak again until the car had crossed over the river to Long Island.
I arranged everything with the servants.
Mr. Foster said.
They're all going off today. I gave them half pay for 6 weeks and told Walker I'd send him a telegram when we wanted them back.
Yes,
She said.
he told me.
I'll move into the club tonight. It'll be a nice change staying at the club.
Yes, dear, I'll write to you.
I'll call in at the house occasionally to see that everything's all right and to pick up the mail.
But don't you really think Walker should stay there all the time to look after things?
She asked meekly.
Nonsense. It's quite unnecessary. And anyway, I'd have to pay him full wages.
Oh, yes,
She said.
of course.
What's more, you never know what people get up to when they're left alone in a house.
Mr. Foster announced, and with that he took out a cigar and, after snipping off the end with a silver cutter, lit it with a gold lighter. She sat still in the car with her hands clasped together tight under the rug.
Will you write to me?
She asked.
I'll see,
He said.
but I doubt it. You know I don't hold with letter writing unless there's something specific to say.
Yes, dear, I know. So don't you bother.
They drove on along Queen's Boulevard, and as they approached the flat marshland on which Idlewild is built, the fog began to thicken and the car had to slow down.
Oh, dear.
Cried Mrs. Foster.
I'm sure I'm going to miss it now. What time is it?
Stop fussing.
The old man said.
It doesn't matter anyway. It's bound to be cancelled now. They never fly in this sort of weather. I don't know why you bothered to come out.
She couldn't be sure, but it seemed to her that there was suddenly a new note in his voice, and she turned to look at him. It was difficult to observe any change in his expression under all that hair. The mouth was what counted. She wished, as she had so often before, that she could see the mouth clearly. The eyes never showed anything except when he was in a rage.
Of course,
He went on.
if by any chance it does go, then I agree with you. You'll be certain to miss it now. Why don't you resign yourself to that?
She turned away and peered through the window at the fog. It seemed to be getting thicker as they went along, and now she could only just make out the edge of the road and the margin of grassland beyond it. She knew that her husband was still looking at her. She glanced at him again, and this time she noticed with a kind of horror that he was staring intently at the little place in the corner of her left eye where she could feel the muscle twitching.
Won't you?
He said.
Won't I what?
Be sure to miss it now if it goes. We can't drive fast in this muck.
He didn't speak to her any more after that. The car crawled on and on. The driver had a yellow lamp directed onto the edge of the road, and this helped him to keep going. Other lights, some white and some yellow, kept coming out of the fog towards them, and there was an especially bright one that followed close behind them all the time. Suddenly, the driver stopped the car.
There,
Mr. Foster cried.
we're stuck. I knew it.
No, sir.
The driver said, turning round.
We made it. This is the airport.
Without a word, Mrs. Foster jumped out and hurried through the main entrance into the building. There was a mass of people inside, mostly disconsolate passengers standing around the ticket counters. She pushed her way through and spoke to the clerk.
Yes.
He said.
Your flight is temporarily postponed. But please don't go away. We're expecting this weather to clear any moment.
She went back to her husband, who was still sitting in the car, and told him the news.
But don't you wait, dear.
She said.
There's no sense in that.
I won't.
He answered.
So long as the driver can get me back. Can you get me back, driver?
I think so.
The man said.
Is the luggage out?
Yes, sir.
Goodbye, dear.
Mrs. Foster said, leaning into the car and giving her husband a small kiss on the coarse grey fur of his cheek.
Goodbye.
He answered.
Have a good trip.
The car drove off, and Mrs. Foster was left alone. The rest of the day was a sort of nightmare for her. She sat for hour after hour on a bench, as close to the airline counter as possible, and every 30 minutes or so she would get up and ask the clerk if the situation had changed. She always received the same reply, that she must continue to wait, because the fog might blow away at any moment. It wasn't until after 6 in the evening that the loudspeakers finally announced that the flight had been postponed until 11 o'clock the next morning. Mrs. Foster didn't quite know what to do when she heard this news. She stayed sitting on her bench for at least another half hour, wondering in a tired, hazy sort of way where she might go to spend the night. She hated to leave the airport. She didn't wish to see her husband. She was terrified that in one way or another he would eventually manage to prevent her from getting to France. She would have liked to remain just where she was, sitting on the bench the whole night through. That would be the safest. But she was already exhausted, and it didn't take her long to realize that this was a ridiculous thing for an elderly lady to do. So, in the end, she went to a phone and called the house. Her husband, who was on the point of leaving for the club, answered it himself. She told him the news and asked whether the servants were still there.
They've all gone,
He said.
In that case, dear, I'll just get myself a room somewhere for the night. And don't you bother yourself about it at all.
That would be foolish.
He said.
You've got a large house here at your disposal. Use it.
But, dear, it's empty.
Then I'll stay with you myself.
There's no food in the house. There's nothing.
Then eat before you come in. Don't be so stupid, woman. Everything you do, you seem to want to make a fuss about it.
Yes.
She said.
I'm sorry. I'll get myself a sandwich here, and then I'll come on in.
Outside, the fog had cleared a little, but it was still a long, slow drive in the taxi, and she didn't arrive back at the house on 62nd Street until fairly late. Her husband emerged from his study when he heard her coming in.
Well,
He said, standing by the study door.
how was Paris?
We leave at 11 in the morning.
She answered.
It's definite.
You mean if the fog clears?
It's clearing now. There's a wind coming up.
You look tired.
He said.
You must have had an anxious day.
It wasn't very comfortable. I think I'll go straight to bed.
I've ordered a car for the morning.
He said.
9 o'clock.
Oh, thank you, dear. And I certainly hope you're not going to bother to come all the way out again to see me off.
No,
He said slowly.
I don't think I will. But there's no reason why you shouldn't drop me at the club on your way.
She looked at him, and at that moment he seemed to be standing a long way off from her, beyond some borderline. He was suddenly so small and far away that she couldn't be sure what he was doing or what he was thinking, or even what he was.
The club is downtown,
She said.
It isn't on the way to the airport.
But you'll have plenty of time, my dear. Don't you want to drop me at the club?
Oh, yes, of course.
That's good. Then I'll see you in the morning at 9.
She went up to her bedroom on the second floor, and she was so exhausted from her day that she fell asleep soon after she lay down. Next morning, Mrs. Foster was up early, and by 8:30 she was downstairs and ready to leave. Shortly after 9, her husband appeared.
Did you make any coffee?
He asked.
No, dear, I thought you'd get a nice breakfast at the club. The car is here. It's been waiting. I'm all ready to go.
They were standing in the hall. They always seemed to be meeting in the hall nowadays. She with her hat and coat and purse, he in a curiously cut Edwardian jacket with high lapels.
Your luggage?
It's at the airport.
Ah, yes.
He said.
Of course. And if you're going to take me to the club first, I suppose we'd better get going fairly soon, hadn't we?
Yes.
She cried.
Oh, yes, please.
I'm just going to get a few cigars. I'll be right with you. You get in the car.
She turned and went out to where the chauffeur was standing, and he opened the car door for her as she approached.
What time is it?
She asked him.
About 9:15.
Mr. Foster came out 5 minutes later, and watching him as he walked slowly down the steps, she noticed that his legs were like goat's legs in those narrow stovepipe trousers that he wore. As on the day before, he paused halfway down to sniff the air and to examine the sky. The weather was still not quite clear, but there was a wisp of sun coming through the mist.
Perhaps you'll be lucky this time,
He said as he settled himself beside her in the car.
Hurry, please.
She said to the chauffeur.
Don't bother about the rug. I'll arrange the rug. Please get going. I'm late.
The man went back to his seat behind the wheel and started the engine.
Just a moment.
Mr. Foster said suddenly.
Hold it a moment, chauffeur, will you?
What is it, dear?
She saw him searching the pockets of his overcoat.
I had a little present I wanted you to take to Ellen.
He said.
Now, where on earth is it? I'm sure I had it in my hand as I came down.
I never saw you carrying anything. What sort of present?
A little box wrapped up in white paper. I forgot to give it to you yesterday. I don't want to forget it today.
A little box?
Mrs. Foster cried.
I never saw any little box.
She began hunting frantically in the back of the car. Her husband continued searching through the pockets of his coat. Then he unbuttoned the coat and felt around in his jacket.
Confound it,
He said.
I must have left it in my bedroom. I won't be a moment.
Oh, please.
She cried.
We haven't got time. Please leave it. You can mail it. It's only one of those silly combs. Anyway, you're always giving her combs.
And what's wrong with combs, may I ask?
He said, furious that she should have forgotten herself for once.
Nothing, dear, I'm sure, but...
Stay here.
He commanded.
I'm going to get it.
Be quick, dear. Oh, please be quick.
She sat still, waiting and waiting.
Chauffeur, what time is it?
The man had a wristwatch, which he consulted.
I make it nearly 9:30.
Can we get to the airport in an hour?
Just about.
At this point, Mrs. Foster suddenly spotted a corner of something white wedged down in the crack of the seat on the side where her husband had been sitting. She reached over and pulled out a small paper-wrapped box. And at the same time, she couldn't help noticing that it was wedged down firm and deep, as though with the help of a pushing hand.
Here it is.
She cried.
I've found it. Oh, dear, and now he'll be up there forever searching for it. Chauffeur, quickly, run in and call him down, will you, please?
The chauffeur, a man with a small, rebellious Irish mouth, didn't care very much for any of this, but he climbed out of the car and went up the steps to the front door of the house. Then he turned and came back.
Door's locked.
He announced.
You got a key?
Yes, wait a minute.
She began hunting madly in her purse. The little face was screwed up tight with anxiety, the lips pushed outward like a spout.
Here it is. No, I'll go myself. It'll be quicker. I know where he'll be.
She hurried out of the car and up the steps to the front door, holding the key in one hand. She slid the key into the keyhole and was about to turn it, and then she stopped. Her head came up, and she stood there absolutely motionless, her whole body arrested right in the middle of all this hurry to turn the key and get into the house, and she waited. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 seconds she waited. The way she was standing there, with her head in the air and the body so tense, it seemed as though she were listening for the repetition of some sound that she had heard a moment before from a place far away inside the house. Yes, quite obviously she was listening. Her whole attitude was a listening one. She appeared actually to be moving one of her ears closer and closer to the door. Now it was right up against the door, and for still another few seconds she remained in that position, head up, ear to door, hand on key, about to enter, but not entering, trying instead, or so it seemed, to hear and to analyze these sounds that were coming faintly from this place deep within the house. Then all at once she sprang to life again. She withdrew the key from the door and came running back down the steps.
It's too late.
She cried to the chauffeur.
I can't wait for him. I simply can't. I'll miss the plane. Hurry now, driver, hurry. To the airport.
The chauffeur, had he been watching her closely, might have noticed that her face had turned absolutely white, and that the whole expression had suddenly altered. There was no longer that rather soft and silly look. A peculiar hardness had settled itself upon the features. The little mouth, usually so flabby, was now tight and thin. The eyes were bright, and the voice, when she spoke, carried a new note of authority.
Hurry, driver, hurry.
Isn't your husband travelling with you?
The man asked, astonished.
Certainly not. I was only going to drop him at the club. It won't matter. He'll understand. He'll get a cab. Don't sit there talking, man. Get going. I've got a plane to catch for Paris.
With Mrs. Foster urging him from the back seat, the man drove fast all the way, and she caught her plane with a few minutes to spare. Soon she was high up over the Atlantic, reclining comfortably in her aeroplane chair, listening to the hum of the motors, heading for Paris at last. The new mood was still with her. She felt remarkably strong, and in a queer sort of way, wonderful. She was a trifle breathless with it all, but this was more from pure astonishment at what she had done than anything else. And as the plane flew farther and farther away from New York and East 62nd Street, a great sense of calmness began to settle upon her. By the time she reached Paris, she was just as strong and cool and calm as she could wish. She met her grandchildren, and they were even more beautiful in the flesh than in their photographs. They were like angels, she told herself, so beautiful they were. And every day she took them for walks, and fed them cakes, and bought them presents, and told them charming stories. Once a week, on Tuesdays, she wrote a letter to her husband, a nice, chatty letter, full of news and gossip, which always ended with the words,
Now be sure to take your meals regularly, dear, although this is something I'm afraid you may not be doing when I'm not with you.
When the 6 weeks were up, everybody was sad that she had to return to America, to her husband. Everybody, that is, except her. Surprisingly, she didn't seem to mind as much as one might have expected. And when she kissed them all goodbye, there was something in her manner and in the things she said that appeared to hint at the possibility of a return in the not-too-distant future. However, like the faithful wife she was, she did not overstay her time. Exactly 6 weeks after she had arrived, she sent a cable to her husband and caught the plane back to New York. Arriving at Idlewild, Mrs. Foster was interested to observe that there was no car to meet her. It is possible that she might even have been a little amused, but she was extremely calm and did not overtip the porter who helped her into a taxi with her baggage. New York was colder than Paris, and there were lumps of dirty snow lying in the gutters of the streets. The taxi drew up before the house on 62nd Street, and Mrs. Foster persuaded the driver to carry her 2 large cases to the top of the steps. And then she paid him off and rang the bell. She waited, but there was no answer. Just to make sure, she rang again, and she could hear it tinkling shrilly far away in the pantry at the back of the house. But still no one came. So she took out her own key and opened the door herself. The first thing she saw as she entered was a great pile of mail lying on the floor where it had fallen after being slipped through the letterbox. The place was dark and cold. A dust sheet was still draped over the grandfather clock. In spite of the cold, the atmosphere was peculiarly oppressive, and there was a faint and curious odour in the air that she had never smelled before. She walked quickly across the hall and disappeared for a moment around the corner to the left at the back. There was something deliberate and purposeful about this action. She had the air of a woman who is off to investigate a rumour or to confirm a suspicion. And when she returned a few seconds later, there was a little glimmer of satisfaction on her face. She paused in the centre of the hall, as though wondering what to do next. Then suddenly she turned and went across into her husband's study. On the desk she found his address book, and after hunting through it for a while, she picked up the phone and dialed a number.
Hello,
she said.
Listen, this is 9 East 62nd Street. Yes, that's right. Could you send someone round as soon as possible, do you think? Yes, it seems to be stuck between the 2nd and 3rd floors. At least, that's where the indicator's pointing. Right away. Oh, that's very kind of you. You see, my legs aren't any too good for walking up a lot of stairs. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
She replaced the receiver and sat there at her husband's desk, patiently waiting for the man who would be coming soon to repair the lift.
The 7 cream jugs.
I suppose we shall never see Wilfrid Pigeoncott here, now that he has become heir to the baronetcy and to a lot of money,
observed Mrs. Peter Pigeoncott regretfully to her husband.
Well, we can hardly expect to,
he replied,
seeing that we always choked him off from coming to see us when he was a prospective nobody. I don't think I've set eyes on him since he was a boy of 12.
There was a reason for not wanting to encourage his acquaintanceship,
said Mrs. Peter.
With that notorious failing of his, he was not the sort of person one wanted in one's house.
Well, a failing still exists, doesn't it?
Said her husband.
Or do you suppose a reform of character is entailed along with the estate?
Oh, of course, there is still that drawback,
admitted the wife.
But one would like to make the acquaintance of the future head of the family, if only out of mere curiosity. Besides, cynicism apart, his being rich will make a difference in the way people will look at his failing. When a man is absolutely wealthy, not merely well-to-do, all suspicion of sordid motive naturally disappears. The thing becomes merely a tiresome malady.
Wilfrid Pigeoncott had suddenly become heir to his uncle, Sir Wilfrid Pigeoncott, on the death of his cousin, Major Wilfrid Pigeoncott, who had succumbed to the after-effects of a polo accident. Wilfrid Pigeoncott had covered himself with honours in the course of Marlborough's campaigns, and the name Wilfrid had been a baptismal weakness in the family ever since. The new heir to the family dignity and estates was a young man of about 25, who was known more by reputation than by person to a wide circle of cousins and kinfolk, and the reputation was an unpleasant one. The numerous other Wilfrids in the family were distinguished one from another chiefly by the names of their residences or professions, as Wilfrid of Hubbledon and young Wilfrid the Gunner. But this particular scion was known by the ignominious and expressive label of Wilfrid the Snatcher. From his late school days onward, he had been possessed by an acute and obstinate form of kleptomania. He had the acquisitive instinct of the collector without any of the collector's discrimination. Anything that was smaller and more portable than a sideboard, and above the value of 9pence, had an irresistible attraction for him, provided that it fulfilled the necessary condition of belonging to someone else. On the rare occasions when he was included in a country house party, It was usual and almost necessary for his host, or some member of the family, to make a friendly inquisition through his baggage on the eve of his departure to see if he had packed up, by mistake, anyone else's property. The search usually produced a large and varied yield.
This is funny,
said Peter Pigeoncote to his wife some half-hour after their conversation.
Here's a telegram from Wilfrid saying he's passing through here in his motor and would like to stop and pay us his respects. Can stay for the night if it doesn't inconvenience us. Signed, Wilfrid Pigeoncote. Must be the snatcher. None of the others have a motor. I suppose he's bringing us a present for the silver wedding.
Good gracious,
said Mrs. Peter as a thought struck her.
This is rather an awkward time to have a person with his failing in the house. All those silver presents set out in the drawing-room, and others coming by every post. I hardly know what we've got, and what are still to come. We can't lock them all up. He's sure to want to see them.
We must keep a sharp lookout, that's all,
said Peter reassuringly.
But these practised kleptomaniacs are so clever,
said his wife apprehensively.
And it will be so awkward if he suspects that we are watching him.
Awkwardness was indeed the prevailing note that evening, when the passing traveller was being entertained. The talk flitted nervously and hurriedly from one impersonal topic to another. The guest had none of the furtive, half-apologetic air that his cousins had rather expected to find. He was polite, well-assured, and perhaps just a little inclined to put on side. His hosts, on the other hand, wore an uneasy manner that might have been the hallmark of conscious depravity. In the drawing-room, after dinner, their nervousness and awkwardness increased.
Oh, we haven't shown you the silver wedding presents,
said Mrs. Peter suddenly, as though struck by a brilliant idea for entertaining the guest.
Here they all are. Such nice, useful gifts. A few duplicates, of course.
7 cream jugs,
put in Peter.
Yes, isn't it annoying?
Went on Mrs. Peter.
7 of them. We feel that we must live on cream for the rest of our lives. Of course, some of them can be changed.
Wilfrid occupied himself chiefly with such of the gifts as were of antique interest, carrying 1 or 2 of them over to the lamp to examine their marks. The anxiety of his hosts at these moments resembled the solicitude of a cat whose newly born kittens are being handed round for inspection.
Let me see. Did you give me back the mustard pot? This is its place here,
piped Mrs. Peter. Sorry, I put it down by the claret jug, said Wilfrid, busy with another object.
Oh, just let me have that sugar sifter again,
asked Mrs. Peter, dogged determination showing through her nervousness.
I must label it who it comes from before I forget.
Vigilance was not completely crowned with a sense of victory. After they had said good night to their visitor, Mrs. Peter expressed her conviction that he had taken something.
I fancy by his manner that there was something up,
corroborated her husband.
Do you miss anything?
I can only make it 34, and I think it should be 35,
she announced.
I can't remember if 35 includes the Archdeacon's cruet stand that hasn't arrived yet.
How on earth are we to know?
Said Peter.
The mean pig hasn't brought us a present. I'm hanged if he shall carry one off.
Tomorrow, when he's having his bath,
said Mrs. Peter, excitedly,
he's sure to leave his keys somewhere, and we can go through his portmanteau. It's the only thing to do.
On the morrow, an alert watch was kept by the conspirators behind half-closed doors. And when Wilfrid, clad in a gorgeous bathrobe, had made his way to the bathroom, there was a swift and furtive rush by 2 excited individuals towards the principal guest chamber. Mrs. Peter kept guard outside, while her husband first made a hurried and successful search for the keys, and then plunged at the portmanteau with the air of a disagreeably conscientious customs official. The quest was a brief one. A silver cream jug lay embedded in the folds of some zephyr shirts.
The cunning brute,
said Mrs. Peter.
He took a cream jug because there were so many. He thought one wouldn't be missed. Quick, fly down with it and put it back among the others.
Wilfrid was late in coming down to breakfast, and his manner showed plainly that something was amiss. It's an unpleasant thing to have to say, he blurted out presently, But I'm afraid you must have a thief among your servants. Something's been taken out of my portmanteau. It was a little present from my mother and myself for your silver wedding. I should have given it to you last night after dinner, only it happened to be a cream jug. And you seemed annoyed at having so many duplicates, so I felt rather awkward about giving you another. I thought I'd get it changed for something else, and now it's gone.
Did you say it was from your mother and yourself?
And yourself?
Asked Mr. and Mrs. Peter, almost in unison. The snatcher had been an orphan these many years. Yes, my mother's at Cairo just now, and she wrote to me at Dresden to try and get you something quaint and pretty in the old silver line, and I pitched on this cream jug. Both the pigeon-cuts had turned deadly pale. The mention of Dresden had thrown a sudden light on the situation. It was Wilfrid the attaché, a very superior young man who rarely came within their social horizon, whom they had been entertaining unawares in the supposed character of Wilfrid the Snatcher. Lady Ernestine Pigeoncut, his mother, moved in circles which were entirely beyond their compass of ambitions, and the son would probably one day be an ambassador, and they had rifled and despoiled his portmanteau. Husband and wife looked blankly and desperately at one another. It was Mrs. Peter who arrived first at an inspiration.
How dreadful to think there are thieves in the house. We keep the drawing room locked up at night, of course, but anything might be carried off while we are at breakfast.
She rose and went out hurriedly, as though to assure herself that the drawing room was not being stripped of its silverware, and returned a moment later, bearing a cream jug in her hands.
There are 8 cream jugs now instead of 7,
she cried.
This one wasn't there before. What a curious trick of memory, Mr. Wilfrid. You must have slipped downstairs with it last night and put it there before we locked up, and forgotten all about having done it in the morning.
One's mind often plays one little tricks like that,
said Mr. Peter, with desperate heartiness.
Only the other day I went into the town to pay a bill, and went in again next day, having clean forgotten that I'd...
It is certainly the jug that I brought for you, said Wilfrid, looking closely at it. It was in my portmanteau when I got my bathrobe out this morning before going to my bath, and it was not there when I unlocked the portmanteau on my return. Someone had taken it while I was away from the room. The pigeon-cuts had turned paler than ever. Mrs. Peter had a final inspiration.
Get me my smelling salts, dear,
she said to her husband.
I think they're in the dressing room.
Peter dashed out of the room with glad relief. He had lived so long during the last few minutes that a golden wedding seemed within measurable distance. Mrs. Peter turned to her guest with confidential coyness.
A diplomat like you will know how to treat this as if it hadn't happened. Peter's little weakness, it runs in the family.
Good Lord. Do you mean to say he's a kleptomaniac like Cousin Snatcher?
Oh, not exactly,
said Mrs. Peter, anxious to whitewash her husband a little greyer than she was painting him.
He would never touch anything he found lying about, but he can't resist making a raid on things that are locked up. The doctors have a special name for it. He must have pounced on your portmanteau the moment you went to your bath and taken the first thing he came across. Of course, he had no motive for taking a cream jug. We've already got 7, as you know. Not, of course, that we don't value the kind gift you and your mother... Hush, here's Peter coming.
Mrs. Peter broke off in some confusion and tripped out to meet her husband in the hall.
It's all right,
she whispered to him.
I've explained everything. Don't say anything more about it.
Brave little woman,
said Peter with a gasp of relief.
I could never have done it.
Diplomatic reticence does not necessarily extend to family affairs. Peter Pigeoncut was never able to understand why Mrs. Consuelo Van Bullion, who stayed with them in the spring, always carried 2 very obvious jewel cases with her to the bathroom, explaining them to anyone she chanced to meet in the corridor as her manicure and face massage set. Dusk.
Norman Gortsby sat on a bench in the park, with his back to a strip of bush-planted sward, fenced by the park railings, and the row fronting him across a wide stretch of Carriage Drive. Hyde Park Corner, with its rattle and hoot of traffic, lay immediately to his right. It was some 30 minutes past 6 on an early March evening, and dusk had fallen heavily over the scene. Dusk, mitigated by some faint moonlight and many street lamps. There was a wide emptiness over road and sidewalk, and yet there were many unconsidered figures moving silently through the half-light, or dotted unobtrusively on bench and chair, scarcely to be distinguished from the shadowed gloom in which they sat. The scene pleased Gortsby and harmonized with his present mood. Dusk, to his mind, was the hour of the defeated. Men and women who had fought and lost, who hid their fallen fortunes and dead hopes as far as possible from the scrutiny of the curious, came forth in this hour of gloaming, when their shabby clothes and bowed shoulders and unhappy eyes might pass unnoticed, or at any rate unrecognized. A king that is conquered must see strange looks, so bitter a thing is the heart of man. The wanderers in the dusk did not choose to have strange looks fasten on them. Therefore, they came out in this bat fashion, taking their pleasure sadly in a pleasure ground that had emptied of its rightful occupants. Beyond the sheltering screen of bushes and palings came a realm of brilliant lights and noisy, rushing traffic. A blazing, many-tiered stretch of windows shone through the dusk and almost dispersed it, marking the haunts of those other people who held their own life's struggle, or at any rate had not to admit failure. So Gortsby's imagination pictured things as he sat on his bench in the almost deserted walk. He was in the mood to count himself among the defeated. Money troubles did not press on him. Had he so wished, he could have strolled into the thoroughfares of light and noise and taken his place among the jostling ranks of those who enjoyed prosperity or struggled for it. He had failed in a more subtle ambition, and for the moment he was heart-sore and disillusionized, and not disinclined to take a certain cynical pleasure in observing and labelling his fellow wanderers as they went their ways in the dark stretches between the lamplights. On the bench by his side sat an elderly gentleman with a drooping air of defiance that was probably the remaining vestige of self-respect in an individual who had ceased to defy successfully anybody or anything. His clothes could scarcely be called shabby, at least they passed muster in the half-light, but one's imagination could not have pictured the wearer embarking on the purchase of a half-crown box of chocolates or laying out ninepence on a carnation buttonhole. He belonged unmistakably to that forlorn orchestra to whose piping no one dances. He was one of the world's lamenters who induces no responsive weeping. As he rose to go, Gortsby imagined him returning to a home circle where he was snubbed and of no account, or to some bleak lodging where his ability to pay a weekly bill was the beginning and end of the interest he inspired. His retreating figure vanished slowly into the shadows, and his place on the bench was taken almost immediately by a young man, fairly well dressed, but scarcely more cheerful of mien than his predecessor. As if to emphasize the fact that the world went badly with him, the newcomer unburdened himself of an angry and very audible expletive as he flung himself into the seat.
"You don't seem in a very good temper,"
said Gortsby, judging that he was expected to take due notice of the demonstration. The young man turned to him with a look of disarming frankness, which put him instantly on his guard.
"You wouldn't be in a good temper if you were in the fix I'm in,"
he said.
"I've done the silliest thing I've ever done in my life." "Yes?"
said Gortsby dispassionately.
"Came up this afternoon meaning to stay at the Patagonian Hotel in Berkshire Square,"
continued the young man.
"When I got there, I found it had been pulled down some weeks ago and a cinema theatre run up on the site. The taxi driver recommended me to another hotel some way off, and I went there. I just sent a letter to my people giving them the address, and then I went out to buy some soap. I'd forgotten to pack any, and I hate using hotel soap. Then I strolled about a bit, had a drink at a bar and looked at the shops, and when I came to turn my steps back to the hotel, I suddenly realized that I didn't remember its name, or even what street it was in. There's a nice predicament for a fellow who hasn't any friends or connections in London. Of course, I can wire to my people for the address, but they won't have got my letter till tomorrow. Meantime, I'm without any money. Came out with about £1 on me, which meant buying the soap and getting the drink, and here I am, wandering about with twopence in my pocket and nowhere to go for the night."
There was an eloquent pause after the story had been told.
"I suppose you think I've spun you rather an impossible yarn,"
said the young man presently, with a suggestion of resentment in his voice.
"Not at all impossible,"
said Gortsby judicially.
"I remember doing exactly the same thing once in a foreign capital, and on that occasion there were two of us, which made it more remarkable. Luckily, we remembered that the hotel was on a sort of canal, and when we struck the canal, we were able to find our way back to the hotel.
The youth brightened at the reminiscence.
In a foreign city, I wouldn't mind so much, he said. One could go to one's consul and get the requisite help from him. Here in one's own land, one is far more derelict if one gets into a fix. Unless I can find some decent chap to swallow my story and lend me some money, I seem likely to spend the night on the embankment. I'm glad anyhow that you don't think the story outrageously improbable.
He threw a good deal of warmth into the last remark, as though perhaps to indicate his hope that Gortsby did not fall far short of the requisite decency.
Of course, said Gortsby slowly. The weak point of your story is that you can't produce the soap.
The young man sat forward hurriedly, felt rapidly in the pockets of his overcoat, and then jumped to his feet.
I must have lost it,
he muttered angrily.
To lose an hotel and a cake of soap on one afternoon suggests willful carelessness, said
Gortsby, but the young man scarcely waited to hear the end of the remark. He flitted away down the path, his head held high, with an air of somewhat jaded jauntiness.
It was a pity,
mused Gortsby.
The going out to get one's own soap was the one convincing touch in the whole story, and yet it was just that little detail that brought him to grief. If he had had the brilliant forethought to provide himself with a cake of soap, wrapped and sealed with all the solicitude of the chemist's counter, he would have been a genius in his particular line. In his particular line, genius certainly consists of an infinite capacity for taking precautions.
With that reflection, Gortsby rose to go. As he did so, an exclamation of concern escaped him. Lying on the ground by the side of the bench was a small oval packet, wrapped and sealed with the solicitude of a chemist's counter. It could be nothing else but a cake of soap, and it had evidently fallen out of the youth's overcoat pocket when he flung himself down on the seat. In another moment, Gortsby was scudding along the dusk-shrouded path in anxious quest for a youthful figure in a light overcoat. He had nearly given up the search when he caught sight of the object of his pursuit, standing irresolutely on the border of the carriage drive, evidently uncertain whether to strike across the park or make for the bustling pavements of Knightsbridge. He turned round sharply with an air of defensive hostility when he found Gortsby hailing him.
The important witness to the genuineness of your story has turned up, said Gortsby, holding out the cake of soap. It must have slid out of your overcoat pocket when you sat down on the seat. I saw it on the ground after you left. You must excuse my disbelief, but appearances were really rather against you, and now, as I appealed to the testimony of the soap, I think I ought to abide by its verdict. If the loan of a sovereign is any good to you...
The young man hastily removed all doubt on the subject by pocketing the coin.
Here is my card, with my address,
continued Gortsby.
Any day this week will do for returning the money, and here is the soap. Don't lose it again. It's been a good friend to you. Lucky thing you're finding it, said the youth. And then, with a catch in his voice, he blurted out a word or two of thanks and fled headlong in the direction of Knightsbridge. Poor boy. He as nearly as possible broke down, said Gortsby to himself. I don't wonder either. The relief from his quandary must have been acute. It's a lesson to me not to be too clever in judging by circumstances. As Gortsby retraced his steps past the seat where the little drama had taken place, he saw an elderly gentleman poking and peering beneath it and on all sides of it, and recognized his earlier fellow occupant. Have you lost anything, sir? He asked.
Yes, sir. A cake of soap.
Srendi Avashtar.
Conradin was 10 years old, and the doctor had pronounced his professional opinion that the boy would not live another 5 years. The doctor was silky and effete and counted for little, but his opinion was endorsed by Mrs. de Ropp, who counted for nearly everything. Mrs. de Ropp was Conradin's cousin and guardian, and in his eyes she represented those 3/5 of the world that are necessary and disagreeable and real. The other 2/5, in perpetual antagonism to the foregoing, were summed up in himself and his imagination. One of these days, Conradin supposed he would succumb to the mastering pressure of wearisome, necessary things, such as illnesses and coddling restrictions and drawn-out dullness. Without his imagination, which was rampant under the spur of loneliness, he would have succumbed long ago. Mrs. de Ropp would never, in her honestest moments, have confessed to herself that she disliked Conradin, though she might have been dimly aware that thwarting him, for his good, was a duty which she did not find particularly irksome. Conradin hated her with a desperate sincerity which he was perfectly able to mask. Such few pleasures as he could contrive for himself gained an added relish from the likelihood that they would be displeasing to his guardian, and from the realm of his imagination she was locked out, an unclean thing, which should find no entrance. In the dull, cheerless garden, overlooked by so many windows that were ready to open with a message not to do this or that, or a reminder that medicines were due, he found little attraction. The few fruit trees that it contained were set jealously apart from his plucking, as though they were rare specimens of their kind blooming in an arid waste. It would probably have been difficult to find a market gardener who would have offered 10 shillings for the entire yearly produce. In a forgotten corner, however, almost hidden behind a dismal shrubbery, was a disused tool shed of respectable proportions, and within its walls Conradin found a haven, something that took on the varying aspects of a playroom and a cathedral. He had peopled it with a legion of familiar phantoms, evoked partly from fragments of history and partly from his own brain, but it also boasted 2 inmates of flesh and blood. In one corner lived a ragged, plumaged Houdan hen, on which the boy lavished an affection that had scarcely another outlet. Further back, in the gloom, stood a large hutch, divided into 2 compartments, one of which was fronted with close iron bars. This was the abode of a large polecat ferret, which a friendly butcher boy had once smuggled, cage and all, into its present quarters, in exchange for a long-secreted hoard of small silver. Conradin was dreadfully afraid of the lithe, sharp-fanged beast, but it was his most treasured possession. Its very presence in the tool shed was a secret and fearful joy, to be kept scrupulously from the knowledge of the woman, as he privately dubbed his cousin. And one day, out of heaven knows what material, he spun the beast a wonderful name, and from that moment it grew into a god and a religion. The woman indulged in religion once a week at a church nearby and took Conradin with her, but to him the church service was an alien rite in the house of Rimmon. Every Thursday, in the dim and musty silence of the tool shed, he worshipped with mystic and elaborate ceremonial before the wooden hutch where dwelt Srendi Avashtar, the great ferret. Red flowers in their season and scarlet berries in the winter-time were offered at his shrine, for he was a god who laid some special stress on the fierce, impatient side of things, as opposed to the woman's religion, which, as far as Conradin could observe, went to great lengths in the contrary direction. And on great festivals, powdered nutmeg was strewn in front of his hutch, an important feature of the offering being that the nutmeg had to be stolen. These festivals were of irregular occurrence, and were chiefly appointed to celebrate some passing event. On one occasion, when Mrs. de Ropp suffered from acute toothache for 3 days, Conradin kept up the festival during the entire 3 days, and almost succeeded in persuading himself that Srendi Avashtar was personally responsible for the toothache. If the malady had lasted for another day, the supply of nutmeg would have given out. The Houdan hen was never drawn into the cult of Srendi Avashtar. Conradin had long ago settled that she was an Anabaptist. He did not pretend to have the remotest knowledge as to what an Anabaptist was, but he privately hoped that it was dashing and not very respectable. Mrs. de Ropp was the ground plan on which he based and detested all respectability. After a while, Conradin's absorption in the tool shed began to attract the notice of his guardian.
It is not good for him to be pottering down there in all weathers,
she promptly decided. And at breakfast one morning, she announced that the Houdan hen had been sold and taken away overnight. With her short-sighted eyes, she peered at Conradin, waiting for an outbreak of rage and sorrow, which she was ready to rebuke with a flow of excellent precepts and reasoning. But Conradin said nothing. There was nothing to be said. Something, perhaps, in his white, set face gave her a momentary qualm, for at tea that afternoon there was toast on the table, a delicacy which she usually banned on the ground that it was bad for him. Also because the making of it gave trouble, a deadly offence in the middle-class feminine eye.
I thought you liked toast,
she exclaimed, with an injured air, observing that he did not touch it.
Sometimes.
Said Conradin. In the shed that evening, there was an innovation in the worship of the Hutch god. Conradin had been wont to chant his praises. Tonight, he asked a boon.
Do one thing for me, Srendi Avashtar.
The thing was not specified. As Srendi Avashtar was a god, he must be supposed to know. And choking back a sob as he looked at the other empty corner, Conradin went back to the world he so hated. And every night, in the welcome darkness of his bedroom, and every evening in the dusk of the tool shed, Conradin's bitter litany went up.
Do one thing for me, Srendi Avashtar.
Mrs. de Ropp noticed that the visits to the shed did not cease, and one day she made a further journey of inspection.
What are you keeping in that locked hutch?
She asked.
I believe it's guinea pigs. I'll have them all cleared away.
Conradin shut his lips tight, but the woman ransacked his bedroom till she found the carefully hidden key, and forthwith marched down to the shed to complete her discovery. It was a cold afternoon, and Conradin had been bidden to keep to the house. From the furthest window of the dining room, the door of the shed could just be seen beyond the corner of the shrubbery, and there Conradin stationed himself. He saw the woman enter, and then he imagined her opening the door of the sacred hutch and peering down with her short-sighted eyes into the thick straw bed where his god lay hidden. Perhaps she would prod at the straw in her clumsy impatience, and Conradin fervently breathed his prayer for the last time. But he knew as he prayed that he did not believe. He knew that the woman would come out presently with that pursed smile he loathed so well on her face, and that in an hour or two the gardener would carry away his wonderful god, a god no longer, but a simple brown ferret in a hutch. And he knew that the woman would triumph always, as she triumphed now, and that he would grow ever more sickly under her pestering and domineering and superior wisdom, till one day nothing would matter much more with him, and the doctor would be proved right. And in the sting and misery of his defeat, he began to chant, loudly and defiantly, the hymn of his threatened idol.
Srendi Avashtar went forth. His thoughts were red thoughts and his teeth were white. His enemies called for peace, but he brought them death. Srendi Avashtar the beautiful.
And then, of a sudden, he stopped his chanting and drew closer to the window pane. The door of the shed still stood ajar as it had been left, and the minutes were slipping by. They were long minutes, but they slipped by nevertheless. He watched the starlings running and flying in little parties across the lawn. He counted them over and over again, with one eye always on that swinging door. A sour-faced maid came in to lay the table for tea, and still Conradin stood and waited and watched. Hope had crept by inches into his heart, and now a look of triumph began to blaze in his eyes that had only known the wistful patience of defeat. Under his breath, with a furtive exultation, he began once again the paean of victory and devastation. And presently his eyes were rewarded. Out through that doorway came a long, low, yellow and brown beast, with eyes ablink at the waning daylight, and dark, wet stains around the fur of jaw and throat. Conradin dropped on his knees. The great polecat ferret made its way down to a small brook at the foot of the garden, drank for a moment, then crossed a little plank bridge, and was lost to sight in the bushes. Such was the passing of Srendi Avashtar.
Tea is ready,
said the sour-faced maid.
Where is the mistress?
She went down to the shed some time ago,
said Conradin. And while the maid went to summon her mistress to tea, Conradin fished a toasting fork out of the sideboard drawer and proceeded to toast himself a piece of bread. And during the toasting of it and the buttering of it, with much butter and the slow enjoyment of eating it, Conradin listened to the noises and silences which fell in quick spasms beyond the dining room door. The loud, foolish screaming of the maid, the answering chorus of wondering ejaculations from the kitchen region, the scuttering footsteps and hurried embassies for outside help, and then, after a lull, the scared sobbings and the shuffling tread of those who bore a heavy burden into the house.
Whoever will break it to the poor child, I couldn't for the life of me,
exclaimed a shrill voice. And while they debated the matter among themselves, Conradin made himself another piece of toast.
The Reticence of Lady Anne.
Egbert came into the large, dimly lit drawing room with the air of a man who is not certain whether he is entering a dovecot or a bomb factory, and is prepared for either eventuality. The little domestic quarrel over the luncheon table had not been fought to a definite finish, and the question was how far Lady Anne was in a mood to renew or forego hostilities. Her pose in the armchair by the tea table was rather elaborately rigid. In the gloom of a December afternoon, Egbert's pince nez did not materially help him to discern the expression of her face. By way of breaking whatever ice might be floating on the surface, he made a remark about a dim religious light. He or Lady Anne were accustomed to make that remark between 4:30 and 6 on winter and late autumn evenings. It was a part of their married life. There was no recognized rejoinder to it, and Lady Anne made none. Don Tarquinio lay astretch on the Persian rug, basking in the firelight with superb indifference to the possible ill humour of Lady Anne. His pedigree was as flawlessly Persian as the rug, and his ruff was coming into the glory of its second winter. The page boy, who had Renaissance tendencies, had christened him Don Tarquinio. Left to themselves, Egbert and Lady Anne would unfailingly have called him Fluff, but they were not obstinate. Egbert poured himself out some tea. As the silence gave no sign of breaking on Lady Anne's initiative, he braced himself for another Yermak effort.
My remark at lunch had a purely academic application,
he announced.
You seem to put an unnecessarily personal significance into it.
Lady Anne maintained her defensive barrier of silence. The bullfinch lazily filled in the interval with an air from Iphigénie en Tauride. Egbert recognized it immediately, because it was the only air the bullfinch whistled, and he had come to them with the reputation for whistling it. Both Egbert and Lady Anne would have preferred something from The Yeoman of the Guard, which was their favourite opera. In matters artistic, they had a similarity of taste. They leaned towards the honest and explicit in art, a picture, for instance, that told its own story, with generous assistance from its title. A riderless warhorse, with harness in obvious disarray, staggering into a courtyard full of pale, swooning women, and marginally noted bad news, suggested to their minds a distinct interpretation of some military catastrophe. They could see what it was meant to convey, and explain it to friends of duller intelligence. The silence continued. As a rule, Lady Anne's displeasure became articulate and markedly voluble after 4 minutes of introductory muteness. Egbert seized the milk jug and poured some of its contents into Don Tarquinio's saucer. As the saucer was already full to the brim, an unsightly overflow was the result. Don Tarquinio looked on with a surprised interest that evanesced into elaborate unconsciousness when he was appealed to by Egbert to come and drink up some of the spilt matter. Don Tarquinio was prepared to play many roles in life, but a vacuum carpet cleaner was not one of them.
Don't you think we're being rather foolish?
Said Egbert cheerfully. If Lady Anne thought so, she didn't say so.
I dare say the fault has been partly on my side,
continued Egbert with evaporating cheerfulness.
After all, I'm only human, you know. You seem to forget that I'm only human.
He insisted on the point, as if there had been unfounded suggestions that he was built on satyr lines, with goat continuations where the human left off. The bullfinch recommenced its air from Iphigénie en Tauride. Egbert began to feel depressed. Lady Anne was not drinking her tea. Perhaps she was feeling unwell. But when Lady Anne felt unwell, she was not wont to be reticent on the subject. "No one knows what I suffer from indigestion," was one of her favourite statements. But the lack of knowledge can only have been caused by defective listening. The amount of information available on the subject would have supplied material for a monograph. Evidently, Lady Anne was not feeling unwell. Egbert began to think he was being unreasonably dealt with. Naturally, he began to make concessions.
I dare say,
He observed, taking as central a position on the hearthrug as Don Tarquinio could be persuaded to concede him.
I may have been to blame. I am willing, if I can thereby restore things to a happier standpoint, to undertake to lead a better life.
He wondered vaguely how it would be possible. Temptations came to him in middle age, tentatively and without insistence, like a neglected butcher boy who asks for a Christmas box in February for no more hopeful reason than that he didn't get one in December. He had no more idea of succumbing to them than he had of purchasing the fish knives and fur boas that ladies are impelled to sacrifice through the medium of advertisement columns during 12 months of the year. Still, there was something impressive in this unasked-for renunciation of possibly latent enormities. Lady Anne showed no sign of being impressed. Egbert looked at her nervously through his glasses. To get the worst of an argument with her was no new experience. To get the worst of a monologue was a humiliating novelty.
I shall go and dress for dinner,
he announced, in a voice into which he intended some shade of sternness to creep. At the door, a final access of weakness impelled him to make a further appeal.
Aren't we being very silly?
A fool, was Don Tarquin's mental comment as the door closed on Egbert's retreat. And then he lifted his velvet forepaws in the air and leapt lightly onto a bookshelf immediately under the bullfinch's cage. It was the first time he had seemed to notice the bird's existence, but he was carrying out a long-formed theory of action with the precision of mature deliberation. The bullfinch, who had fancied himself something of a despot, depressed himself of a sudden into a third of his normal displacement. Then he fell to a helpless wing-beating and shrill cheeping. He had cost 27 shillings without the cage, but Lady Anne made no sign of interfering. She had been dead for 2 hours.
Hypocrisy.
Flattery is like a cigarette. It's all right as long as you don't inhale.
What really flatters a man is that you think him worth flattering.
It is easy to keep from being a bore. Just praise the person to whom you're talking. If you flatter, your conversation is never flat.
Flattery consists in telling the other fellow what he thinks of himself.
When I tell him he hates flatterers, he says he does, being then the most flattered.
I hope you have not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being really good all the time. That would be hypocrisy.
Our idea of a hypocrite is the man who carefully folds his New York Times around his tabloid before starting home.
The only form of lying that is absolutely beyond reproach is lying for its own sake.
Truth is the most valuable thing we have. Let us economize it.
Inventions.
A weed is a plant whose virtues have not yet been discovered.
The atomic age is here to stay. But are we?
If they keep fooling around with H-bombs, someday they're going to pick a Miss Universe, and there won't be any universe to be Miss of.
When a man sits with a pretty girl for an hour, it seems like a minute. But let him sit on a hot stove for a minute, and it's longer than any hour. That's relativity. Albert Einstein.
I can remember when scientists used to spend all their time trying to figure out how old the Earth is. Now they're just wondering how much older it's going to get.
Look, I'm trying to discover a liquid that will dissolve everything.
That's great, but what are you going to keep it in?
Benjamin Franklin may have discovered electricity, but it was the man who invented the meter who made the money.
We owe a lot to Thomas Edison. If it wasn't for him, we'd be watching TV by candlelight.
Fortunately, the wheel was invented before the car. Otherwise, the scraping noise would be terrible.
Science is always wrong. It never solves a problem without creating 10 more.
An American company announces an invention. The Russians claim they made the same discovery 20 years before. The Japanese start exporting it.
If an experiment works, something has gone wrong. Murphy's Law.
Jokes.
I'm rather worried about your wife's condition. I don't like the way she looks.
I haven't liked it for years.
I'm afraid your condition is critical. I shall have to remove half your large bowel.
That's all right, Doctor. Better a semicolon than a full stop.
I should never have got married. My wife doesn't like me when I'm drunk, and I can't stand the sight of her when I'm sober.
Shortly after the outbreak of the Second World War, a soldier was asked what had made him join up. There were several reasons, he replied. I wanted to serve my country. I wanted to fight fascism. I wanted to build a brave new world fit for heroes. But the main reason was that they came and got me.
So your son is an undertaker?